online property meet. I'm Rob Norton, and I'm just turning this meeting is being recorded thing off. I'm Rob Norton, and my associate here is Dan Arter. We have speaking with us the lovely Alice Dartnell. Hello, Alice. Are you there? She was here. She's here. She was here a minute ago.
Yeah, let's give it away.
Yeah. And Will Lucy, as usual. Hello, Will, again. And also, of course, we have Louise Reynolds, who's going to talk to us as well.
Yeah, here. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, great stuff. I must admit, it seems like I haven't done this for ages because I wasn't here last month. I was actually away myself in wonderful. Everyone's talking about Montenegro and Greece and stuff like that. I went to Dorset and Devon, and the weather was absolute rubbish. It was horrible. It wasn't horrible, but it was just, at least it was somewhere to go, different to go. So, yes, welcome to the online meet. I've got a little presentation that I was going to do, and it's just a quickie about 7 things you may wish to be aware of when you're buying and refurbishing property. So I'll go into that, and then I'll introduce Will, our next speaker. So the first thing is a cheap property is not always a good deal. The thing is, can you fix it? If it's a property, it's got something wrong with it, you probably can fix it. If it's got a broken window, if it's got a broken roof, depending on the cost, is it worth it? That's another thing. Can you fix it? Yes, you probably can. What you can't fix is the property in a floodplain. Does it have a pylon in the back garden or an electrical substation? They're the sort of things that you have to be aware of when you're first starting out to buy properties. Second thing is that flipping and buying to hold should be treated as 2 separate ventures. I'm not going to say much about this, just to make people aware who may be wanting to go into refurbing property. It's a good thing to speak to an accountant. I'm not an accountant, so don't speak to me. Just be aware and ask your tax advisor, whoever it is. The work begins before you buy. You've got to find the property first of all. You've got to get it surveyed. You've got lots and lots of work before you actually buy it. And then you've got all the costs. You've got planning. Perhaps you can get in there and take measurements and plan for whatever you want to do with the property. Materials obviously don't go buy them before you've completed or before you've exchanged, but be aware of what it might cost. Another number 4 is how about creating a plan, a structured plan of the project, so that you could have it in a book, you could have it in a loose leaf folder or something like that, but it's a general book that keeps everything in order. It shows you a bit of a business plan, really, and it shows you where you're going with it. You make money when you buy. 3 ways of doing that. One is to buy below market value. Second way is to add value to the property once you've got it, and also create a win-win situation for both you and the vendor. And find and hold the best subcontractors. Keep hold of your builders. Once you've got a bit decent builder, keep hold of them. Look after them. Make them cups of tea. Don't get in their way. Don't be a nuisance and get in their way all the time. But when they want something, be there to answer questions or make decisions or whatever you have to do. And one other thing is that a refurb normally costs more than what you budget for. And something like a 10% minimum contingency is not a bad thing to do in your plan. Mm-hmm. So there's my 7 little tips. That's my little presentation over, and I will pass you over to Lucy. Will.
Hi there, Rob. Thank you very much indeed.
That's okay.
I'm officially passed over. Right, I am going to share my screen with you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Will Lucy. I'm a commercial broker. I specialise really in just development finance and bridging. That's what I mainly do. There are various other finance products that we can help with, but that is our core business. Okay, so developers are our main client base. So right, so before I get going, just some pre-talk points. Okay, I've just got a couple of little topics to go through tonight, so nothing too crazy. I just want to say before I even start is that everything I talk about in these slides and when I talk about giving these presentations is all aimed at limited company borrowers. It's all for business purposes, okay? And none of it is personalised advice. So each situation is different. So if you needed any help with any particular funding, then do get in touch specifically, okay? So quickly, my background is in accountancy. I'm a chartered accountant. I worked for developers, small and large, doing all sorts of different sizes of development. And I spent more time doing funding than I was accountancy by then. But so I actually loved that side of it. It's a world of hundreds of lenders, and they all do different things, and all these tiny bits of criteria can trip you up when you're looking for a deal. Some lenders will lend on one thing and they won't lend on another, and they can change their appetite on a weekly basis at times. So it all is very changeable, and so there is a manual element to it, and that's the bit that I love. So it's, for me, this sits well. So I'm not going to go so much into market commentary at the moment. However, what we do tend to hear mainly at the moment is either rates are going down. This is what we hear in the kind of sort of property finance news. Either rates are going down, criteria is being relaxed, and lender confidence is high. And products that lenders weren't offering or they hadn't been offering during the pandemic are coming back. So, and things like that. So that is, it's generally all positive, and there's generally good confidence out there amongst the lenders. So that being said, let's move on. So I won't get stuck on this hard. These are the things that we cover as a brokerage. I'm going to move on. So what I wanted to just cover today is that, you know, what for using a good broker, why would that actually help you? And there's a number, okay, of things that where a broker can add value if they are good. So make sure you whittle out the people that are actually going to help you with your business. As Rob was saying, you want to hold on to your contractors. You want to hold on to the people that work well for you. And it's the same with anything. So if you've got a broker and they're a good broker, you should treasure them, hold on to them, because there's lots that they can do for your business and help you along the way. So let's get straight into this. It won't take long. There are quite a few points, but it won't take long. So look, okay, what makes a good broker? What makes a broker a value adder? Okay, well, there's various things where brokers have obviously helped. A good broker would have helped lots of different clients. There would have been newbies, there would have been experienced clients, and people just starting to build their businesses up. So they will understand various things. One of these things is that the cheapest deal isn't always the best. Okay, so what happens normally with first-time developers, particularly, is that they come through various different programs or courses, things like that, and when they go in to find the finance for their particular development, they get absolutely stuck on all the detail about whether this is slightly cheaper than that one and saving money here and there. What rather than finding a lender who is pretty cheap, obviously, is you know, who's actually competitive on price, but is going to work with them, and it's going to be a fluid process, because that is more important than saving the small amounts of money. You need to get the deals done, you need momentum, and you need them to complete. So obviously, a good commercial broker will have expertise in the commercial landscape, okay? They will understand commercial finance. They will tend to arrange different lenders. So if you have relationships with one or two lenders, there is obviously only a certain amount they can do, and there are hundreds of lenders out there. So it's best to keep your options open. And they can look at your scenario in a more holistic manner. What does that mean? Well, that is one of the main actual value adders, okay, from brokerage, because when they're looking at your overall scenario about what you're trying to achieve, they might be able to use other finance products elsewhere in your portfolio, or maybe refinancing something you already own, or extracting equity from another property you own. There's lots of different things that you can do which might make your whole financing package cheaper and more dynamic. They can foresee pitfalls. That is a really important one, because along the way we kind of understand as brokers what lenders are looking for, what they need to see, and so therefore we can see whether something might be an issue along the way, and it can be tackled up front, okay, saving time, saving hassle. Again, the presentation of your team and prospective lenders, that's really important. We need to bring through those details. We need to make sure that the lender sees the good parts about your particular deal, about your team, and that is brought through depending on your experience, depending on what you need, you know, what your strengths and weaknesses are. that can really help. Okay, coordinating the loan process and liaising with the different professionals involved. A good broker, they literally oil the machine. Okay, they'll go around and they'll chase. They love chasing. They're happy to chase. A broker doesn't care about how hassled people are. But if they, in terms of making sure solicitors are doing what they need to do, making sure the lender's doing what they need to do, making sure evaluation is booked in, making sure a QS is getting the numbers back for a development deal, things like that. A broker is there to make sure these things are lubricated and they keep going. Okay, because momentum, as I was saying, in the deal is key. Momentum is what you want. When it starts, you want to get that deal done. Okay, you don't want to get clogged up in the process with the problem because everyone stops working on it and they work on something else in the queue. So they can, of course, explain the loan process, which is particularly important for first-time developers or the people with less experience. Obviously, analysing different lender terms, that is one of the things that lots of people get caught out by. The way that lenders charge interest can have a huge difference. So some lenders charge interest on the net loan they give you, some charge it on the gross of the total loan they give you from day one. Okay, that makes a massive difference. So one lender can look cheaper, but actually the way they charge their interest can be more expensive. Peer-to-peer lenders can be a bit like that, where they draw down money from investors to use to lend to you. Okay, in order to do that, they will sometimes draw down the amount you need towards the purchase, okay, for say a development loan, and they might draw down the next 2, 3, or 4 drawdowns worth of build, okay, straight up front, and then have it on hand to pay you. And so in the moment that is drawn down, you are paying interest on that before you are actually using it for the build. Okay, so all these things can add up. A good broker will know the difference, and so it will be able to pick these things out for you and highlight them to you when they show you the options. Okay. Okay, catering for a wide variety of finance products, you know, that goes without saying. You know, if you need to do something and you need to do a development deal, and there's a way of doing it with raising some more money from your buy to let, which goes towards the development, or having a second charge on another asset that you own, which can pay for a certain thing, or putting some finance on one thing and then swapping out for a term in the right amount of time. You know, all these kind of things can be structured, and actually it can be much more advantageous for you. It can often be the difference of being able to do a deal and not being able to do a deal. Okay, if someone can sensibly look at it, put something in place. And the other one, which goes hand in hand with that, is that we could switch to an alternative or backup lender if something goes wrong. So say a lender won't lend, or they have an issue with it, or a lender could have a review and then decide that this area is a risk of ours, now we're not going to lend in this area, and you could have gone through quite a lot of the process. You know, a broker will have a backup, and you can just go for that backup. If you're stuck with one lender, you may not have that. You might lose the deal, and that is far more costly than obviously having something backed up. Okay, so they'll stick with you until the deal is done. I mean, we have one deal going on at the moment, which I noted down, with 253 emails and 66 calls thus far. Okay. And it's not yet complete either, and that's because we've gone with one lender. The valuation wasn't that great. It then wasn't able to proceed. We're now exploring different lenders. We're going down the road. There's lots of different things to sort out. We're having lots of meetings and Zoom meetings with these clients because we want them to understand exactly what's happening at each juncture of the process, and we are sort of walking them through it. Okay, so that's why, and so we're in it until it gets done, because we don't get paid until loan completes. Okay, so we're in the same boat. So, and obviously, clearly, good ones care about your success, because that is the key. That is the key to everything being okay. And obviously, finally, you're the developer. Okay, so you need the time to go and find projects. Okay, that is your main thing. Even running them. Okay, even finding a team and running around during the project and making things work is still not as hard as finding the right development at the right price. That is the main thing. You can get in the door, the numbers work, and as Rob was saying, make the money on the buy. Okay, don't overpay for something, and don't get caught up. Have some alternative exits and things like that. That is the thing that developers want to concentrate on, not their finance. Okay, leave that to a broker. Take the hassle away. Okay. So those are my little points there. Ended up turning into a slight rant here and there, but anyway. So another thing. So what I want to cover now is just a little product focus. Okay, before I finish, and that is that we're seeing a lot more development exit products at the moment that are required. A lot more development exit inquiries, and we're seeing these kind of products being a lot more popular. What are they? Okay, well, they are quite simply various different scenarios. They are where a developer has started a development, and they need more time to actually finish it, and the lender they're with cannot cater for that extra time, okay? And so therefore they can refinance, okay? So they might need more time to finish it, they might need more extra money to finish it, and there are various different things. If it's nearly complete, what you could do is you can refinance it, extract some cash out, and finish it, extract some capital out for the next deal, okay? While also giving some extra time for your current development to actually sell, okay? So we're seeing this a lot. So I thought what would be handy would be is let's take you through the kind of things that you can actually do with these products so you can understand them. So the idea is this flows through from number one. Number one is saying, right, well, you're in a position where you've got a development and you need for some reason more time, okay? Well, obviously you'll go to your current lender first. I mean, that's a no-brainer. There's no point spending a load of cost and time if they'll do it for you. So if they can't, then what are your options? Okay, or if what they come back with is not really adequate, or they're going to charge you a load of fees anyway, you may as well look for what else you could have. Okay. So number two, okay, what you could do is you could do a bridging loan. Okay, a bridging loan is quite simple. It is simply just saying it needs a complete property. So the properties that are finished and complete, you then refinance those at normally a higher LTV than you are at with your development loan, so you can release some cash, okay, to go and buy something else, and it gives you another period of time, normally 12 months, okay, to sell those particular properties. Okay, you does have the potential, you could technically rent them as well. However, you need to understand what your priorities are. So if you rent them, first of all, not all bridging lenders will allow you to rent them, okay, because they are for sale, and then you're limiting your buyers to investors, okay, but it's possible. But I'll put that in there because it's worth checking out. Okay, cash release from future sales. That I put tougher, although it's not tougher at the moment. It's a bit easier, but cash release from future sales means that when that bridging loan lender has lent you a certain amount of money, and you say you've got 10 flats to sell, after you've sold, say, 2 or 3, the lender may allow you to start retaining some of these sales proceeds as you sell more, keeping the LTV at least at where it is, if not lower than their original LTV. Okay, if that makes any sense at all. Okay. It means that you can start getting your hands on that cash as a developer, because as a developer, if you've got cash, you make more and more money, because all you need is the capital to go and buy more projects, okay? Normally on these, there's no exit fee or early repayment charges, i.e. you can, after the first month or 3 months, sell all of the properties, and you wouldn't get any early repayment charges, okay? You might have a minimum interest period of normally between 1 and 3 months, and all that is saying is that the bridging loan lender is saying, well, we need at least between 1 and 3 months interest, depending on what lender they are. Otherwise, they make no money whatsoever. That's why they do it. So, okay, if you are part selling and part retaining, there are products for this, okay? And actually, it's a bridge to let product, weirdly. They work like bridge to let products, which are, as you probably all know, are products where you can buy a flat or buy a buy-to-let property that you need, do the work to that property, and then refinance it at the higher level, all with the same lender on a bridge to let. But this is the other way around. What this allows you to do is do a bridging period, which gives you an early repayment charge free period where you can sell as many of them as you want. At the end of that period, it flips straight into a buy-to-let. So whatever's left gets scooped up and put into a buy-to-let loan. So some developers love this because they think, well, I can sell as many as I can, and then I know that it's going to go into a buy-to-let period after that. Okay, it works where you are sort of fully intending on part selling and part retaining. Okay, if you were going to retain all of the properties, that would be completely different. You would then, as soon as your development is complete, you would be lining up before that happens. So as your development, say a couple of months away from your development being complete in terms of the build, you would apply, go to a broker, get all the options, and you would apply for your buy-to-let. And you would be looking to get the valuer out on the day that that the properties are visually complete. So you don't need to have building regs sign off and everything like this all done, and kind of warranties and things in place. You just need to be visually complete for the valuation, and those particular documents can follow, okay, before completion of the loan. So you need to be decisive here, okay? So if you're going to retain, you need to put them on the market for rental. You can't leave them for sale. So you can't sort of have a cake and eat it in this scenario. So these buy-to-let lenders are designed for rentals. They're not designed for a cheap loan while you sell this property. Partly because you will probably have early repayment charges anyway that are quite expensive on buy-to-let loans, which makes that untenable in a way. But you must commit to do that. They will monitor it, and they will look at it and say, look, we can still see it's for rent. We can still see it's held for sale online. We need you to change that. Okay, multiple units. So basically, when you're doing this, if you've created, in my example, 10 flats from a commercial conversion, let's say, those 10 flats will likely be on one title. There are commercial lenders for term deals, okay, that will take all of those properties on a single title on one mortgage. You don't need to split them all up. That's the beauty of commercial funding. However, if you do that, you may not be able to sell any during the term, okay? So bear that in mind. So once you've committed to doing all on one title with one mortgage, you are stuck with that lender for that term if you want to sell one of those, okay? So i.e. you wouldn't be able to sell 2 out of a block of 10 because the lender would say, well, no, you have to repay our loan if you do that, and then refinance back again, and it's costly, and it's not really going to work for what you want to do. So, and here, if you were to split the titles, so what you could do is you could split the titles first. So some developers go to do that. If you do that and you want to keep them all, it gets quite complicated, because once they are on those 10 flats all in different titles, you get something called concentration risk, and it means you have to do a number of different buy-to-let lenders. They probably only take 2 each in a block, maybe even 1. So you need to think about that and how complicated it actually ends up being, and discuss it with your broker, okay? And if you split the titles, okay, do it upon refinance. Don't do it in advance. That's not for any technical legal point. That is just simply because there have been land registry delays. And what can happen is you can split them, and then what happens is you're not able to refinance because those applications with land registry have not gone through, and so the new lender's not able to put their title, not able to put their charge on the title because they don't have clear title. Okay, so that can cause an issue. That being said, I've got my little side note in here. Obviously, make sure if you're thinking of doing splitting titles or anything like that, always seek independent legal advice and tax advice, okay, on that before you do it, okay, because it can have implications. Right, lastly, okay, a finish and exit product. What is this all about? Well, actually, if the build is 85 or between 80 and 90% finished, you can still exit with a bridging loan in the same manner, but you could do it with a bridging loan that also provides the bit of funding that you need to finish the development. So you might want to refinance earlier, okay, rather than wait until they're complete. And you can do that with these products. There are some quite good products out there. They can fund the remainder of the build. And then after the build is completely funded, then it flips to a normal bridge with the potential to maybe capital raise, and it gives you that marketing period, okay, where you can sit back and actually have proper time to market your products at the prices that you want to achieve, okay, rather than being forced. So that's the little product focus in there, okay. Other than that, that's it for me. Other than I always mention that we run an introducer program where if you want us to do the work for you and you earn some money, then by all means do point any developers or property investors you come across our way, and then we will look to pay you, or we will pay you a small percentage of our first fee we get for each instruction. So we don't pay ongoing fees for every single client ongoing. It's only for new instructions. But if you want to know more about that, then whiz me a message. And other than that, I'm going to hand you back to Rob and say thank you very much for listening, and have a nice evening, everybody. I think Rob's on mute there as well.
Yeah, I am, but I'm not now. I just couldn't get it off quick enough. Thank you very much, Dan. It's very interesting as usual. Yeah, it's we do have a WhatsApp group. If you're interested in joining the WhatsApp group, then by all means contact us and we can stick you on it, and it keeps us all in communication with each other. And other than that, we have Alice Dartnell now. Are you ready, Alice?
I certainly am. Yeah,
she
absolutely.
Certainly is, the lovely Alice Dartnell. Here she is in all her glory. Away you go, Alice.
Fab. I'm just going to do that really irritating thing where I try and find
my screen
slides.
Sorry, am I being a bit quick there?
No, it's just because it's I've got to click on the screen and bring it up. Can you see
I can see you. I can see your top tips.
Top tips. Perfect. Oh, don't you love it when tech works? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice Dartnell, and I am going to guide you through today some top tips so that you can enter the next season strong, because I don't want to freak too many of you out, but it is actually the 1st of September today. So yeah, I did have a little, oh my God, how did it get to September earlier? And so my intentions for you today is I want to show you how you can end 2021 strong. I'm really sorry to be saying that, but we've only got 4 months of the year left. I also want to give you some do's and don'ts of planning so that you can end your 2021 strong. And I'm also going to throw in some practical tips as well as give you an opportunity to ask any questions and talk about any next steps that you want to take as well. Because my intention for you is at the end of this talk is to have a few practical tips that are going to help you in your life, in your property business, so that you can end the 2021 absolutely smashing. So who am I? My name is Alice Dartnell. I'm a life and success coach, and I specialize in time management, energy management, and mindset. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. I work with one-to-ones, so I work with private individuals on a private one-to-one basis, but I also go into organisations and deliver workshops as well. So that might be organisations in their HR training, or it might be to membership groups. But the focus there is about productivity and workplace wellbeing. I'm also the founder of Success Box, a personal development book club. You can probably see a few of the books lurking behind my head. And I'm really fascinated about how we create a life by design. That's what my passion is. You know, too many of us are living on default mode. Hopefully you guys aren't, because you're doing what you love, you're doing your property, etc. So I'm really passionate about helping people create a life by design, and this means owning your time. This means maximizing your time but not sacrificing your health or anything like that, because I've been there, and unfortunately I have suffered burnout. So whilst I was shit hot at my time management, I've never missed a deadline. I was juggling multiple workloads, all that kind of thing. I was super organized, but I had really bad burnout in 2019. It's because I wasn't protecting my energy. And I want to show you how you can end 2021 absolutely smashing your goals in business and your personal life, but also maintain that balance. And what we're going to do is we're going to do that through the power of planning. Okay, so if any of you aren't so great at your planning, you're going to get a lot from tonight. So quick bit of housekeeping. Feel free to share your tips and ideas. I know the chat is already going off from our previous speakers, so do keep it interactive. And also don't force yourself to take any of the tips that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, okay? This is about making it work for you. And feel free to keep it interactive and ask any questions, but do be assured there's plenty of time at the end as well for questions. And I'm sure if you ask questions throughout, Rob can scoop them up when we get to the end as well. So before we begin, let's just have a little bit of a temperature check. I always like to gauge where the audience are before we dive straight into it. So in the chat, can you just let me know how you would rate your current planning? Are you bossing it? Are you up there? Are you doing all right, but you could do with a few more tips? Or is it something that you want to do, but you've got no idea where to begin? So whereabouts are you? And if you can't be bothered writing the whole thing, you could just write 1, 2, and 3. 1 for bossing it, 2 for doing well, but want a few more tips, or 3, I don't know where to start. So where are we currently, gang? Okay, so Rajesh is a 2. We've got Malika at a 3. Dan is somewhere between a 2 and a 3. We've got another 2. Louise has got a plan, but not enough discipline to keep revisiting. Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it, Louise? You've got a plan, but how do you stick to it? Yeah. Clay's 2.5. Okay, cool. So hopefully, guys, you're in the right place, because you're going to get a few glorious tips from me today. So I've just lost my clicker, sorry. Okay. Before we get into it, we've got to establish why planning is so important. Like, why even bother doing it, in a nutshell? Now, this might sound a bit silly, because planning, planning is the thing you do, right? But if you don't really solidify in your mind the importance of planning, something inside you is always going to rebel against it. So if you're somebody who's like, oh, I should plan, but you're never going to commit to it if you've got that attitude. So why plan? It's so important. I want us to establish that first so that you can build that foundation to build your planning on. Now, I love this quote by Albert Einstein, because he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes implementing and thinking about the solutions. And I absolutely love this, because this shows us exactly why we do not jump straight into action. Actually, first of all, we need to have to think about it and plan about it. Planning is so much more than just meeting deadlines, being organised in a busy life, making sure you don't miss appointments for your partner's birthday. It's also about moving all those intricate parts of your busy life that matter to you and somehow making them fit. It's somehow making your property business fit with maybe your full-time job, with your family, with your caring commitments, your social life, your hobbies, etc. So time management is a bit like a jigsaw or like a game of Tetris. You've got to keep moving these pieces about. And if you don't plan, then you're not going to own your day. And if you don't own your day is going to own you. It's also really difficult to know how much time you have to dedicate to things if you don't plan. Also, if you don't diarise and plan your actions, then how do you know when you're going to get them done? And your daily actions are going to add up. This is a concept called the slight edge, and it's going to take you one step closer or one step further away from your goals. So I really want to advocate and cement into you that planning is absolutely critical. So let's go into what time management and productivity really is, because productivity isn't just about doing things as quick as possible. It's not just about being efficient on the job. It's not just about whacking through your to-do list really quickly or moving a project forward really quickly. It's really important that we understand there is a difference between busy and productive. And what does it really mean? And this is something I talk heavily on my signature time management course, because time management isn't just about cramming in as much as you can in a 24-hour period. It's about doing the right things. It's about doing things in the right time, in the right way, the right things that are going to move you forward to your ultimate goal, whether that's in your business, your professional life, your personal life, whatever it may be. You could have a productive week, i.e. you were busy, you were ticking through the to-do list, you had an inbox of 0 because you cleared it all. But what good is that if it's not actually taking you closer to where you want to be? So you've got to set realistic expectations of what you want and achieve them. And when I say realistic, I don't mean don't have dreamy goals. I want you to dream absolutely massive. But if you're working full time and you're doing your property on the side, you've got a family to look after and an elderly mum that you've got to pop in and see once a day, you've got to be realistic about how much time you have available to you. And often what happens is people create a plan, but they haven't thought about the time implications around it. And this is why plans often fall by the wayside. So it's really critical that we plan our success. I also advocate that we don't just plan according to the time of the day. This is what I call clock management, and a lot of us are working to this. So what I said about energy management earlier, time management, I want you to think of it really as energy management. So it's not just about doing things as quick as possible, going through the to-do list, but also think about your energy. Are you a morning person? If so, maybe that's the best time to do some of the meaty work. Are you somebody that has an afternoon slump around 3 o'clock and you start begging for the biscuits, for that sugar hit? If so, what can you do instead in that time to perk you up? Because perhaps working through it isn't the right thing to do. It's about understanding how you can plan according to that as well. So for the purpose of tonight, I have got 8 top tips I want to share with you for the do's and don'ts of planning. As I said, I wanted to make this really practical for you, and I've left loads of opportunity for Q&As as well, because I want you to be able to ask me questions directly to make this work for you. So feel free to start popping your questions into the chat right now. So let's go into some of the do's and the don'ts. Number 1, do make it a habit. So many people say to me when I'm working with them that I really want to get into planning. Well, just do it. Just start. It's free. You just need a pen and paper or Outlook. I mean, you can use some fancy apps, but you don't have to. So I keep it old school. I actually just plan using my Outlook calendar on my emails. You know, that's it. And if I wanted to be able to print it, I can. Like, I don't have a fancy journal or planner or anything like that. If you want something done, you just have to start. Just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect from the beginning. So if you want to get into planning and make it a habit, just get on with it. Just do it. Tip number 2, I've alluded to this already. Plan to your energy. Don't just plan to the clock. Most people are doing that, unfortunately, and they're planning the time according to the clock. However, you're not taking into consideration your peaks and your troughs. Like I said, if you're a morning person, you might find that you absolutely smash your projects in the morning, but that afternoon slump absolutely gets you and you are not productive. So what's the point of slogging through it? Can you manipulate your day a little bit so that you're maximizing your energy? Full disclosure, for 2 hours this afternoon, I went for a long walk around the local park because my energy was starting to wane. And I knew that I wouldn't just, if I sat there at the computer plugging away, I wouldn't actually be productive. So it's really important that we look to our energy management as well. So what can you do? Ask yourself this right now. What's one thing that I can do tomorrow or the rest of the week that's going to help boost my productivity because I'm going to plan it around my energy? My third tip for you is to always make sure that you plan your tips to your long-term goals to create your life by design. Too often when we plan short-term. We plan for the next week, the next month, and even if you're planning for the next year, you still might be playing small. You still might be planning small. If you're all here in property, you've probably got big dreams of where you want to be in 3 years. Well, start working backwards and work out what you've got to do today to make that dream in 3 years a reality. Start working backwards and planning that in. There could be courses that you need to go on. There may be people that you need to connect with, attending things like this, for example, so that you can learn. So what do you need to do today that's going to assist in your long-term goals, create your life by design in your business? Start working backwards and plan that in as well. My fourth do for you is to add in non-negotiables. When it comes to planning, most people are going to put in their diary first, the big, urgent, screaming at you loudest projects. But actually, we've got to be really careful that we don't just succumb to the things that are shouting at us, the loudest, and pretending that they're urgent. Because often what happens is we urgently firefight everything, and then we neglect the priorities that are going to add up to that long-term success. But if we don't do it today, you might not notice. So this is often why people's big dreams go by the wayside and their plans go by the wayside, because they're urgently firefighting the calls and the emails, but they're not really a priority. And then they neglect their reading, or they neglect networking meetings like this, or they neglect learning, or they neglect their health by not going to the gym because they didn't have time. So be really careful of that and make sure you plan those business as usual, dare I say it, sometimes a bit boring, things into your diary that you need to do to help you edge your way closer to what you're trying to achieve. So you're tying it in with your long-term goals. You're making that a non-negotiable. They're linked. Do those things first. For me, I'm not in property, but at the moment I'm learning Japanese and I'm learning Spanish. So first thing in the morning, I try to get that done so it's out the way. Same with my exercise. These are like some of the core components that make up my success. Like these are things that keep me grounded. The exercise is good for my mental well-being and my physical well-being. And learning languages are really important for some of my personal goals. So I try to get them done before my workday even begins. So add your non-negotiables in and absolutely commit to those. So let's move on to some of the don'ts. Don't get stuck to the original plan. A big mistake when it comes to planning is that people feel like they can't deviate from the original plan. They're like, I've made a plan now, so we better stick to it. But things change, life changes, we're busy, projects move, and I'm sure it's like that in the property world where things move thick and fast. So you've got to plan and you've got to have a bit of flexibility around it, especially when life throws you a curveball. Now, you might be thinking, well, what's the point of planning, Alice, if the plan doesn't work, if it doesn't execute the way you planned it? But you need something to tinker with, and to have a plan and amend that is better than not having a plan at all. So I always plan my week ahead on a Sunday. It's only what, Wednesday, and my plan has already changed. I'm meant to be driving to Gravesend on Friday to drop some stuff off to my nan's, but I didn't get the car hire that I wanted, so I'm going in early October. I've onboarded 2 new clients this week unexpectedly, so I'm having to carve out time for that. So it's not about sticking rigidly to the plan. It's about knowing that you've got a plan and sometimes things move, and that's okay. So be flexible. A second common mistake that people make when it comes to planning is over planning. You don't want to be planning to the inch of your life so that every single minute of your day is accounted for. This is going to be overkill. This is also going to disrupt your ability to plan. So one of the guys on my Own Your Day Time Management course, bless him, he did this. He was very excited about getting into planning, and he literally planned every hour of his day for the next week. It was very regimented, a very strict agenda. Did it work? Of course it bloody didn't. You know that things are going to go wrong, meetings are going to overrun, trains are going to be late. So it didn't work. The key there is don't overplan. You only want to be working to about a 50% of your space, your diary being filled up. Now, you've also got to make sure, on that note, you've got what I call white space. So there's some gaps, buffers, backups, alternatives, because things sometimes will go wrong. And this is why it's really important that you don't need deadlines to the last minute. If something is due in, say, for example, on the Friday, aim to get it finished by the Monday or Tuesday. So you've given yourself a bit of a buffer. I had this, a real life experience a couple of weeks ago. I found myself on a glorious sunny Saturday, one of the few that we've had in England, and I was sitting in A&E for 6 hours. Not what I had planned, but luckily the things that I had planned to do on that Saturday weren't urgent deadlines. I'd given myself a bit of a buffer and a backup, so I was still able to complete them on the Monday, Tuesday, and get myself back up to speed again. So be careful not to overplan, okay, guys? My third don't for you is don't keep it to yourself. Unless you're a recluse or you don't have any interaction with anyone else, which I think is highly unlikely, then you make sure that you communicate those plans to whoever needs to know, whether that is socially or professionally. It's really important that you share your plans. Maybe that's with your partner, maybe that's with your business partner, maybe that's with your VA, maybe that's with your team. But it's really important that you communicate those plans so that people understand what direction you're moving in and when. So just as an example, to today, I was filming a mini training that I'm putting together, and I knew I planned it in advance, and I let my VA know that I was filming it on Wednesday, and that Wednesday evening, because she's in Canada, Wednesday evening is her Wednesday morning, that she would be getting this video to upload onto the website, etc. So it makes everything a lot more seamless when people know. She's now obviously blocked out that time, rather than me giving it to her on a Wednesday and her going, oh, well, I can't actually get to that for another week because I'm busy. My fourth don't for you is don't forget the crucial business as usual. So when we're in planning mode or we're planning stuff, it's really easy to think of just the big things, you know, the big exciting renovations that you're doing on a property perhaps. But actually, plan everything. I plan everything down to a T. This includes things like my housework, when I'm going to call my mum, when I'm going to do my admin, when I'm fitting in my house chores, you know, things like that, when I'm going to the gym. It's really important that we also think about the daily, even if it's a bit boring, business as usual things, that we're not just thinking about those kind of big ticket items. Now, before we shoot into Q&As, I want to have a little bit of a pause there, because I want you to think how you're going to plan from now until the end of the year so that you can end the year strong. Now, this may be professional goals, it may be personal goals, it's totally up to you, but I want you to think about, how am I going to end the year strong achieving my goals via planning. And perhaps there's a particular tip, a particular do or don't has resonated with you. So I'm going to keep them on screen for you. And I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to get thinking about that. And I would love for you to share in the chat, or if you're brave enough to show your camera and unmute yourself. But I would love for you to share in the chat what you're going to be doing to implement great planning to help you end the year strong. Two minutes isn't a long time, and I can't unfortunately see your faces, so I do hope you've got your pens and paper. Yogesh is saying, yeah, find me a VA. Yeah, absolutely. And a great bookkeeper. I might be able to help you with that one. If you want to drop me an email, I might be able to give you some recommendations. Just pop my email in there so you feel free to message me. So think about now, 1st of September, where do you want to be at the end of the year? It's only 4 months, guys. How are you going to plan it? What do you need to do? So Yogesh is saying sell poor performing properties. I love it. So Yogesh, how are you going to plan that in? How are you going to make that a reality? Yeah, okay, evict tenant and put a market. Okay, so you can't do that overnight. So plan that in. When are you going to do that? So Rob's saying that you've got a serviced accommodation unit. Amazing, fantastic. And now we're looking for a second one, aiming at 1 per month. Amazing. Again, planning that in, Rob. When are you going to do it? Is that something you do at the weekends together? Is that something that you block out time for in the week? Anyone else? Okay, so Dan, for me, a big one is doing the tasks that are the most important to me first and making them non-negotiable rather than listening to the noise of what other people feel is urgent for them. Love that, Dan. Absolutely. Yeah. Putting those tasks in for you. And people always ask me how I get so much done. And it's like, because I'm working on the things and doing the things that are important to me and going to move the needle forward for me. So Yogesh is saying, create more passive income, have an even powerful network. Yeah, network, fantastic. And again, Yogesh, plan that in. When are you networking? How often are you networking? You know, plan everything in like that. Louise is saying, revisiting my original plan and update with what needs to be packed into the 4 months I may have not achieved so far this year. Yeah, absolutely. It's totally okay, isn't it, Louise? So like rejig deadlines and things like that. So absolutely get that original plan. Let's revisit it and have a little rejig for the last 4 months of the year as well. Okay, Yogesh, again, find my purpose in life, a charitable cause. Again, Yogesh, planning that in. Do you know what your cause is and you just need to find the charity? You're going to block out time to search on the internet or talk to people about recommendations. So yeah, it's not just about listing your goals, guys. It's about actually planning it in. When are you going to do these things? Just give a couple more minutes. There's a lot more of you on the call to the chats that have been going on. So I hope you guys are actually implementing some planning tips here and thinking about your plans. Okay, so we've got here, do more exercise. Again, don't just say do more exercise. When are you going to do it? Is it the fact that you're going to exercise every Monday, Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m, for example? Is it that you're going to hire a PT so that you've absolutely committed to it? Are you going to go for a run with a friend every Wednesday at 8 p.m? You know, what does that actually look like? Oh, I love the book recommendation, Louise. Fantastic. Amazing. Simon's saying, I need to implement more non-negotiables before starting my workday. Yeah, absolutely. Because these are the things that are going to move the needle forward for you, for your goals, your business, your finances, your relationships, your health, etc., etc. Whatever it is you're currently working on or wanting, it's so important to implement those non-negotiables. Absolutely. Amazing. Feel free to keep that coming, guys, but I am just conscious of the time. I can see the obviously time management. I can see the clock, the corner of my eyes. So before we shoot into Q&As, as promised, one of my intentions as well was just to show you how you can get a little bit more help if you need it. And as you know, time management is my baby, and I'm really excited that my signature time management course, Own Your Day, is back. So we had a spring cohort, but we're actually also going to have an autumn cohort, which is an 8-week course starting mid-October, wrapping up for Christmas. And we haven't technically gone live yet on sale. So this is your opportunity to nab a place before we even go on sale. And this is an 8-week course. It's live. You have access to all the recordings indefinitely, and there's 2 bonus group coaching calls following the course in the new year as well, to make sure that you are on track. And also there's a WhatsApp support group to help you in between the sessions, and a dedicated resources area as well. And we are covering everything you can imagine when it comes to nailing your time management, planning, productivity, prioritization. We're going to be covering things like distractions and procrastination, and we're going to be covering things like how to put those non-negotiables first, how we actually create that life that we want with the time that we have available as well. And it's going to be really hands-on, really practical, but also blended with some theory as well, because this is not your usual time management course. This is me challenging you. This is me challenging the current way of thinking, the current way of working, empowering your choice, your intention, because I want you to create your life and the business that you want with practical application and intention. And as I said, we're not live yet, so you're able to get the access to the course for the early bird price, because we don't actually physically go on sale yet until the 13th of September. So you still got time. So feel free to email me. I'll pop the link and the website in there in the chat as well, because more than happy to welcome you on if you feel like time management is an area you need a little bit of more support in your busy lives. As promised, I also wanted to have an opportunity for you to ask me any questions when it comes to your time management or your planning, so that you can end the year strong. So I'm more than happy to answer anything that's in the chat, or like I said, if you want to unmute yourself and come on camera and ask your questions, I would absolutely love that as well. And what you can see on screen here is just the various ways to connect with me via email. I hang out on Instagram. You can check me out on my website. And if you want to sign up for the newsletters so that you get some free tips and trainings coming through into your inbox, then obviously make sure you sign up for the newsletter as well. So I know that was a whistle-stop tour through planning, but hopefully that's giving you a little bit of insight into how you can use some planning top tips, some do's and don'ts, so that you can end your 2021 strong. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Has anyone got a question? Okay, Dan, how do you decide the tasks that are going to move the needle in your life? Okay, fantastic question. Dan, what this boils down to is your values. So when I do my time management calls, I always start with values, and people are like, what? I thought you was going to give me planners and trackers and stuff like that. No, you need to get your foundations right first. And this means knowing your values, what's really important to you and your goals. And when you know your values and what's important to you and your goals, then you know what tasks are going to help you move the needle forward in your life, and that's going to help you prioritize. Because unfortunately, we all got eyes bigger than a belly when it comes to time. And also, if you're like me, I'm so impatient. I get that off my mum. I want to do everything, and I want to do it now. And you can't do everything now. So sometimes you've got to hold stuff off. Like, there's so many goals and things that I want to try, do, and accomplish. And it's like, am I going to get that all done in 2021? Probs not. So it's about also knowing it's okay to park things. It's okay to say, do you know what, I would love to learn how to play the saxophone, but it's not happening this year. I'm going to park that for 2022 or 2023. I'm going to concentrate on this instead. So it's really important that before you start to look at time management techniques and think tricks like that, you actually take a step back and go, what's really important to me? Like, what are my values? Like, where do I want to spend my time? What do I want to achieve by the end of the year? Does that help, Dan? Does that give a bit of a fab? Fantastic. So Yogesh is saying, how can you find someone you can trust to do your tax returns accurately? I'm not sure that's a time management question. So if somebody can help Yogesh out there, that'd be fantastic. My aunt does my aunt is an accountant, Yogesh, and as I said, you know, if you want to email me, I'm more than happy to like link you up to her, but I'm afraid I can't answer questions about tax returns. But I can answer the next one. How do you keep motivation up? Sometimes too much boring, tiring stuff to get through. Totally hear you on this one. I hate things like admin. Now, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because I'm a life coach. So you probably expect me to be all rah-rah motivation and, you know, wake up hungry and go to bed satisfied and all that. I don't actually believe in motivation. There's something called ego depletion. And unfortunately, what this means is things like willpower are in short supply. So this is why when we're tired, we can't say no to that extra slice of cake because we're too tired. Like, so we've got to be really careful that we're relying on this mythical thing called motivation. And I teach what we need to focus on instead are things like habits. So we get ingrained to do something rather than thinking, shall I do it? Shall I not? And the problem is when you're in the stage of, shall I do it? Shall I not? You're relying on motivation to take you in the right direction. Oh, no, I should do that. Where actually, if we relied on habits and also planning, because we plan to do things at a certain time, then that's how we overcome this battle with motivation. Because I'm sure we've all done it where we've had that like devil and the angel on our shoulder, and oh, we really should go to the gym. Oh, well, I can't be bothered, I'm tired. Or, you know, I really need to get those forms and that admin done, but you know, Netflix. So we've all had those internal battles, haven't we? So I'm not a fan of motivation. I'm a fan of habits and planning. So Yogesh, hopefully that answered your question, but feel free to add a little bit more. And Yogesh, you've also asked best value to determine my values and priorities. I'm not sure if that's a question or a comment. So let me know. Any other? Oh, what is the best way? What is the best way to? Sorry, is the question, what is the best way to determine my values and priorities? So one of the things that I work on, okay, got it, to find your values. So one of the things that I work on with my clients is that, because it is really important, and I don't think there is a one way to do it because everybody's different. There's loads of different tools and techniques that you can use to work out what your values are, therefore to determine what your priorities are. So things like your wheel of life can be a really valuable tool, or it could also just be observation. So looking at what makes you happy, what drains you, where you're spending the most of your time that makes you feel like, oh, it's been a good day. All these kind of things can contribute to finding out what your values are. You can go by like past experiences and things like that as well. So there's multiple ways to do that. I don't offer or recommend one particular way with my clients. I do like a range of things. So yeah, I think it's really important to explore different ways to do that. So maybe look at your past experiences, maybe do a wheel of life, maybe even look at just what fills you up, you know, what makes you go to bed at night going, it's been a bloody good day today. That, yeah, brilliant. Any other questions? got very quiet crowds tonight, so but I'm more than happy to answer questions, guys, so feel free to pop it in the chat. Oh, so the Wheel of Life is a coaching tool. If you Google it, it's wheel as in like a car wheel, driving wheel, circular wheel. If you just Google that then basically is a visual way to look at the different areas of your life. You rate it 1 to 10, so you can see what areas are kind of filled up and what areas aren't. So it's Wheel of Life. Sorry, my accent is terrible. I'm really bad at saying like differentiations between like wheel and towel and towel. Yeah, sorry. Michael, what is the best book you recommend on creating habits? I love that, Michael. So my 2 top recommendations for you, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and Atomic Habits by James Clear, both really, really good books about how to create habits. Also Charles Duhigg, I think, yeah, Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, he actually talks about why we can't break a bad habit. So if you're desperately trying to break some bad habits, that's a really good one to get started with, because not only does he talk about the science of a habit and how the habit is made of a cue, routine and a reward, but he also talks about why you can't break one, which when I discovered that was a game changer, because you know we've all been there trying to break our bad habits, but no wonder it doesn't work. So I'd recommend that one to you, Michael. Oh, my pleasure, Yogesh. I'm glad that was useful. Happy to take any more questions. Oh my God, Simon, I love this question. I can't see you, but yeah. How important do you think it is to plan for breaks during the day to keep productive? So important. Studies have shown time and time again that breaks are crucial to keep our attention span alive and to keep ourselves productive. This slogging it out nonsense doesn't work. We have to take action by taking a break. And we think when we're in a restful state, our brain's not doing anything, but it is. It's still working behind the scenes. It's still consolidating information. It's still in that creative work sort of like process. It's kind of storing memories. It's doing so much, even though you think you're resting. And this is why often you might be slaving away at a problem. Oh God, I can't work this out. And then you sleep on it. You know, have you ever had someone say, oh, sleep on it? Or you have your aha moment in the shower. There's a reason for that. It's because you're putting your brain in a different state. And it's, even though it's not actively thinking on something, it's still working behind the scenes. So Simon, I'm so glad you asked that question. Absolutely, so important to planning breaks during the day. And going back to that energy management thing, think about that. Are you a morning person? If so, maybe you don't need 11C breaks. Maybe you need, what I did today was a great big break from 2:30 to 3:30. Most people, and we're all different, we've all got our own circadian rhythms and preferences, but most people are at their most productive usually from the hours of about 8 a.m. to about 2 p.m. So taking a lunch break in the classic sense of around 1 p.m. might not actually be the best thing for you, because might be your peak productivity time. You might be better off taking a late lunch at say 2 p.m. Even if you work a 9 to 5-ish kind of lifestyle, you might be better off doing say a 9 till 2, taking a break at 2-3 p.m. when you're kind of like that and stuffing digestives in your face. And then you do a couple more hours work after that. That might actually be better for you. And also don't underestimate the power of micro breaks, you know, just 5-10 minutes. Yeah, that's going to keep your productivity up as well. So I love that you asked that question, Simon. Yogesh, does your course help with stress management? I would need to know a little bit more about where the stress is coming from, Yogesh, but if your stress is coming from the fact that you feel overwhelmed because you're too busy and you don't have enough time, then yes, the course will help. If your stress is coming from, say, relationship or finances, then the time management course might not be the best option. But yeah, feel free to message me and we'll be able to work that out for you. Do you recommend any apps to help with time management. Louise, I love that you've put a little little suggestion in there. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm so old school. I don't really use that many apps. I like to keep things simple, and I like to try and keep I'm on my phone all the time for obviously having an online business. So I don't actually use any apps with time management. One of the best things that I can suggest though, and it's not an app, but that's just stop watching your timer on your phone. So putting timers on you so that when the timer goes off, it's like, oh, it's time to take a break, or it's time to like move on to the next task. Things like that, really, really, really important. Oh, thank you, Andy. Glad that's been inspirational. Do I have any books on the subjects you recommend? Do you know what? I always get asked this because obviously I'm an absolute book fiend, and I'm a founder of a personal development book club. I actually have really struggled to find the book that I would recommend. So much so, I'm actually writing a book at the moment based on energy management, because I just haven't found a book that just ticks all book boxes at the moment. In answer to your question, though, I don't want to be a politician and not answer it. In answer to your question, books that I would suggest are 168 Hours by Laura Vanderkam. And the reason for that is because in 168 hours, she goes into different areas of the life and shows us that actually we do have enough time. So that one's good. And The One Thing by Gary Keller, that's quite good as well, because he hones in on the fact that we're trying to do too much and we just need to narrow down. His opening line to the book is, if you try to catch two rabbits, you'll catch neither. So his obviously emphasis is that we need to narrow down the focus and do the one thing. So yeah, that might be a great one for you. Andy, feel free to ask me a little bit more specific about a book recommendation, like, you know, for this particular thing. So obviously time management is quite broad, but yeah, feel free to like DM me or email me, more than happy to answer. Okay, Rajesh is saying, how do I position myself as a sales or business coach in the marketplace, and how do I create my ideal client avatar? That's not really a time management question, but as a business owner, I'll quite happily put my spin and my opinion on it. But please do note that I'm not a business coach. My expertise is time management, and that's what this talk is about. But how you position yourself in sales or business, first of all, if you try to position yourself as two things, you won't position yourself as either. So are you trying to be a sales coach, or are you trying to be a business coach? Get really specific on what your expertise is. It's better to be a big fish in a small pond, so that you've got the expertise in a particular niche. And I know it's really scary niching down, but it's really important, because also that's going to help you have focus about what you hook your businesses, your services, your programs on, and then that will help you create your ideal client avatar as well. To create your ideal client avatar, I would say as well, don't just go straight in with it, but have a look at the kind of clients that you have attracted in the past, even if it's pro bono or guinea pig work, because then that's going to help you see what you do and don't like working with as well. When we think about business, we think it's like, you know, we're always hustling for the business, but actually it's like dating. It's a two-way thing, right? You know, I've got to like you, you've got to like me. So you think about creating your ideal client avatar, but also who do you want to work with? What's the kind of people you want to work with? Not just about the type of person you're attracting. It's two ways. So as I said, Rajesh, I'm not a business coach. I'm not here tonight talking about business. I'm here as an expert in time management, but hopefully my personal input might be able to help you guide that one. Any other questions? I think that's it, Rob. I don't think we've got any more questions. Just to say, my details are on the screen there, guys. I will pop them in the chat as well. You're more than welcome to connect with me. I love connecting with people on social media. So yeah, drop me a DM message, say you were here tonight. If you've got any questions or you want to know more about the course or anything, then yeah, just holler.
Alice, absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. I feel so motivated. It's great.
Good.
As
Good,
always,
good.
she's lovely. Isn't she lovely, folks? She's great. Absolutely. So Do I just see someone else coming up? Rajesh, did you want to say something? No, maybe not. Maybe not. Okay then. Moving swiftly on, we've got Louise Reynolds. Are you there, Louise?
Yeah, I am here.
Oh, wonderful. Louise is going to talk to us about distant due diligence, I believe. Away you go. Is that okay?
It is indeed. Can you see my?
Wonderful. I can see DDD.
You can see my screen, which is good.
I can.
Okay. So great presentation there, Alice, and also earlier on from Will. I think Will's probably already gone. He mentioned that he was going. So yes, something completely different. Due diligence at distance. So thanks, Rob, for having me on here. Now, the intention is that I am going to highlight some thoughts, a framework, some tips, ways that you can use due diligence to de-risk property investment. And the idea is that you come away with at least one new thing that you can either incorporate into your due diligence toolkit, or if it's something you can't do yourself, that you can then go away and seek some support. Seek some support with it. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about me and why due diligence is important to me, but this is really relevant to any of you who are doing due diligence, whether it's at distance or not, and I will compare and contrast the differences between doing straight due diligence and doing it out of area. So if any of you are out of area or distance investors, please do pop that in the chat box. It'd be interesting to see if there are people here who invest out of area. But to kick off the presentation, what I want you to do, first of all, is to use your imaginations. I want you to imagine a scenario where you joint venture with someone at distance. So you're in a different location to where you want to invest in the property, and the joint venture partner is there on the ground with the properties. And you are investing in 2 rundown homes to renovate. And it all starts really well, but then things start to creep out of the woodwork in the relationship, and the relationship turns sour. And eventually ending up with a joint venture partner running off with the 2 properties, not literally picking them up and putting them under their arm, but basically seizing ownership of the 2 properties. So that's an example where a relationship, a joint venture relationship, goes sour. Before I finish up on that one, I want to just think about a different situation now. Now, I don't know how many of you here buy at auction. I suspect there might be 1 or 2 of you. So I just want you to imagine you're buying a property at auction and you believe that you've done your due diligence really well, and you've gone and you've checked out the property that you end up buying at auction. And then it's when you get ownership of the keys and you go back to that property, on the first time you've done the viewing, you've got a sort of a bit of an icky feeling in your stomach, in your gut, that you weren't quite sure about, but you couldn't put your finger on what it was. And it's only when you return to the property, once you've taken ownership and you start looking around again, that you realise why you had that odd feeling in your stomach. And it turns out that there is a bath in the property, but the reason why you felt a bit odd in the first place is because the bath wasn't quite where it would normally be in the bathroom. It's actually leaning up against a wardrobe. And then you turn around and you have a look at the radiators that you had seen there on the walls, and then you realise they're not connected up either. They're just there as dummy radiators on the walls. And it's only when you come to turn on the tap that you realise actually there's no mains water, there's no mains water connection. And this actually ended up costing this female investor thousands of pounds to get the utilities connecting up, which she hadn't budgeted for in her original budget when she was investing. So what have these two scenarios, these two situations got in common? Well, they're both real. They're both real life examples, things that have actually happened. And I think they're both two instances of due diligence, where they've both got due diligence in common. In the first example with a joint venture, I would argue that there'd been insufficient due diligence done, particularly on the joint venture partner, and indeed on the way that that whole deal was structured. There wasn't sufficient security for the joint venture partners, and they'd ended up allowing the local joint venture partner to have title of the property, which made it very easy for him to run off with them. And in the second instance, I would argue that due diligence had been done, but maybe by an investor who was a little bit too trusting. But, you know, us Brits, we tend to be a little bit, you know, we don't want to cause a furore. We don't want to upset the apple cart and to ask too many questions or do too many things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. But it would have paid off to have done it in this instance when this female investor got a bad sensation in her stomach. So she hadn't, she'd been a bit over trusting of human nature and expected everything to be as it was. And in reality, there was no utilities. So these two examples show why due diligence is important, and doing it at distance even more so. So whilst it's not the sexiest thing in property, it is potentially the thing that might end up saving you the most money. So just flip through that a bit too quickly. So just before we get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation, I'll just give a little bit of a background about me and why I'm here talking about distance due diligence. My background is in marketing, sales, management consultancy. So I bring over 2 decades worth of business experience to my property business. I got onto the property ladder back in 1987. And that was in North London, that property there in Alexandra Palace. And the only way that I could afford to get onto the property ladder was with the rent-a-room scheme, which some of you might be familiar with, where you rent out a room and you're a live-in landlord. So now the allowance is about 7,500. You can get tax-free income. And then back in 1987, it was about half of that. But so it's one way that you can start to build up your finances and a way of getting on the property ladder where you might not be able to afford the mortgage on a regular basis. I'm an investor and a landlord, both in the UK and abroad. I like to think of myself as a FTOB, a first-time overseas buyer. So I am used to doing due diligence at distance and on my doorstep. And there are some differences between doing it for another country. That there is the property on the left is in Poland, in Krakow in Poland. So that was my first investment property. Then another example there in Surrey, where I am based. So I do due diligence for myself and my investments, but also in my business. I set up my business Property Venture in 2007. And it's through that I help other investors, expat investors in particular, and distance investors invest in UK property. And I have 2 core services, one which is a bespoke buying agency service in the home counties area, because I'm based in Surrey. So I can help investors buy properties against a specific brief in the home counties. And then on a national level, I offer off-plan and also consulting for those who are investing in different areas. So I have an offer and can help out-of-area investors who are based in the UK, plus also Brits based abroad, expats who can't always get back here and who don't necessarily always know or have the time to look around the area that they want to invest in. I like due diligence, and there's a picture of me there in carrying out some due diligence in France, the one with the crane behind it, and the picture there of me talking is presenting at the NRLA. And there's lots of pictures of me with hard hats. That's me doing due diligence in the Midlands area. And I like due diligence because I am a cautious investor and I have to do due diligence to get myself comfortable with investment. So that may or may not chime with you, but it's certainly an important part of what I do on my own investments, plus also what I do on behalf of clients. So let's get into talking about due diligence and what is it. Now, if you are a novice buyer, novice investor, you might well think, well, isn't due diligence what the lawyer does, checking out the title of the property? Well, yes, it is, but it's also so much more than that. So in terms of legal definitions, not only is a lawyer going to be checking out the title, that it comes with clean title to protect your interests, but there's also a responsibility on a lawyer to check who you are, to do their customer due diligence, to identify that your identity is correct before they even before they even take you on as a client. There's also a different definition in accounting terms. So it's a detailed examination of a company before you decide to whether to get involved with that company. Now, this is of relevance to property because it may well be that you are buying property within an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, or within well, a limited company, which is a type of SPV. So you want to know what it is that's contained in that vehicle. It might be more than property. There might also be a lot of debts in that special purpose vehicle. So you want to be comfortable with that before you get into it. And then we get on to the traditional due diligence that people understand, which is on the property. So yes, that forms an important part of the due diligence. You want to understand its true commercial value and any potential risks before you get involved. In essence, it's very wide-reaching, this whole term due diligence, but in effect, it's basically doing detective work, and it's doing as much as you can up front before you make an offer and before you get involved. And the difference with straight due diligence and distance due diligence is that really you've got to be more systematic and thorough when you're doing things at distance, because you're relying a lot more on other people. So let me take you through what I see as the due diligence tiers and tips, so the different layers. Not everybody thinks about this. And in fact, there was a question, I don't know if it was Yogesh or someone, about how you check out an accountant and find someone you can work with who you can trust in. Well, people is a very important part. Checking out the different people that you come across in your investment journey is really important. And in fact, in some respects, as equally important as doing it on the property. But my first port of call here with people is checking out yourself. Now, that might seem a very odd place to start, but it's basically sanity checking what your objectives are, checking that you're on the right track. So if you set your strategy, like Alice was talking about in terms of your objectives and what you're setting out to do, if you set out your objectives as building up a retirement pension pot through property, you know, and you want low risk vanilla buy-to-lets, then if you get persuaded by a really good salesperson that this that this off-plan exotic development in Brazil is for you, you know that actually that is really off limits for you, because that's not where you're heading, that's not what your strategy is about. So sanity check that you're doing the right thing in the first place. Then other people in the buying process are intermediaries, agents, sourcers, and auction houses. So a good estate agent can make or break a property deal. They'll be proactive, they'll chase through a transaction and make sure that the deal is clinched. Likewise, you know, you get good and bad sourcers. And if you get a novice sourcer that might not know what they're doing, they can waste an awful lot of your time if they've got a deal that's got about 6 other people involved in the chain, and you can be wasting a lot of time playing Chinese whispers, trying to find out what the true situation is and what the numbers are. So do beware. And likewise with auction houses, there are some good auction houses and some not such good auction houses. There have been auction houses known in the past as, if they're in cahoots with a developer, they can sometimes be used as clearing houses for some less than salubrious development. So actually, if you're buying through an auction house, you probably also want to check that they are a reputable place for you to be buying. Then you've got the vendor, which could be an individual or a developer or a company. And if you are buying from an individual, you're buying a resale property, then, you know, there's a certain onus on the estate agent to have checked out the vendor and that they are who they say they are. But if you're buying direct, you're buying a new build through a developer, you ought to be checking that they are someone with the right kind of reputation, a company with the right reputation, and that you are going to get what you're expecting to get. And other professionals in the chain. You know, we all think, you know, well, a lawyer or an accountant, they're professional, right? They're a member of a professional body, therefore they must be good. Well, yes and no. Being a member of a professional body is in itself does not necessarily mean that they're the right person for you for that job. You know, a standard process orientated conveyancing firm is not necessarily going to give you the right advice or help if you're looking at title splitting, which is, or leaseholder extension, which is a very different skill set to standard conveyancing. Now, we all use, I'm sure, social media. And so there are some really good sources out there that you can use just to sanity check. You know, if you haven't dealt with these people before or these companies before, you know, Google reviews are good, Facebook. There are lots of review sites out there like Trustpilot, FIFO, Checkertrade. But do be aware that sometimes some of these review sites actually restrict negative reviews. So like Checkertrade, if you look at a 9.9 out of 10 score for someone, may not actually in reality mean 9.9 because they may well have suppressed some poorer reviews. So yeah, use all of those, and Companies House is a great source of information, particularly if you're checking out developers. But it can get quite complex because developers tend to set up special purpose vehicles for each of their developments. So you do kind of need to get attuned and trained in what you're looking for. But sometimes gaps in information on Companies House can tell you as much as, you know, if there's an overload of information there. And you can also check out, you know, with a developer or anyone really has got a, you know, bankruptcies or, you know, CCJs. So there's lots that you can do to check people out online. And also, obviously, within your social media network, ask questions if it looks like someone's linked up with someone else. Now, the other main area to be checking out, as we've mentioned, is property, you know, the location. Is the property, if you're looking for capital growth, you might want to be checking that the location supports that. There might be improving infrastructure going in. You know, if you're buying in a place that's just been announced in the last budget that, you know, is getting Freeport status like Plymouth, that may well augur well for your investment because there will be a degree of inward investment which may help with the appreciation of your investment. Building type and deal. Now, early on, it's worth making a note of whether the building type is of standard construction or not so, because further down the track, that might cause an issue with a mortgage or, in fact, with insurance. A lot of lenders prefer standard construction, and if it's anything that departs from that, your mortgage might be more expensive, or you might get a fewer pool of, you know, less lenders who will loan you the money on it. And the deal, what's the structure? Are you buying the property, or are you buying an SPV, or are you buying a property that's already tenanted? And that will mean that you'll have to do further investigations and to check out the AST and all of the existing legal paperwork to make sure that you don't come a cropper there. Master plot and individual. If you're buying through a developer, not only do you want to be checking out the individual plot that you're buying, but also the whole of the development. You know, I have helped people buy in other countries in Europe, Spain, Poland, Portugal, France. And, you know, at the peak of 2007, 2008, there were a lot of developments, particularly in the Murcia area in Spain, golf resorts, where a lot of the value of a property was going to come from the amenities on the resort. And they're usually the last thing to get built. So if a developer goes bust partway through and the amenities aren't there, you've then got lots and lots of plots and individual properties, but a lot of the value has not been attributed to that property because the amenities aren't there on the resort. So these are important aspects to consider. And then you also really want to be paying attention to the process. the funder. If you're going for a bank, make sure it's the right kind of bank who's going to lend to you, or an investor. If you're seeking private funds from a private investor, you ought to be checking out that they can, in fact, afford to be lending you money, and checking out that they're a high net worth or a sophisticated or restricted investor. There are FCA rules around that. So looking for private finance is great, but you do need to make sure you know what you're doing and you cover yourself, because you risk exposing yourself to some pretty powerful regulators if you don't. Then there's also the deal structure that you ought to be checking out. And going back to the example the scenario that I gave right at the outset of this presentation, you want to make sure that if you're setting up as a JV setup, that you have got the right people, that you have the adequate security and title and protection there for if the JV goes wrong, and you each have the right kind of exit options in place. So they are my tips, my different layers of due diligence and tips on doing it. What I'm going to do now is take you through a framework for what you can use as a checklist for doing your due diligence, particularly if you're investing out of area. And I've used this framework when I've invested abroad, and it's also quite a good checklist for if you're investing out of area. So STEP-led is a mnemonic, and each of those letters stand for something and are meaningful. S is for social, so workforce mobility. So if you are embarking on a serviced accommodation strategy, then, or an HMO, then a transient workforce might be important for you in terms of your avatar or your target tenant, your ideal tenant. As the culture of home ownership is in continental Europe, the culture of home ownership is less than in the UK. They have much longer tenancies. Letting and renting is much more ingrained in the culture. There are a whole host of reasons why that is. But home ownership in the UK as a percentage has started to drop. So who knows, over the next decade, we could see more of a parity in the UK, where we could become more like continental European countries and their culture of home ownership and renting. The T is for technology and infrastructure. So that's not only transportation, is the place you're investing in getting a new road, new rail link, or the equivalent of an HS2 or Elizabeth line. And it's not just physical roads, it can also be technology. Again, serviced accommodation HMOs, you might be relying quite heavily on broadband capacity, so you want to make sure that that's there for you. The E is for economic and financial. It can also include taxes and foreign exchange as well. You want to be looking at well, GDP is gross domestic product, which tends to be what you would look at we talk about the UK's GDP, gross domestic product, as a size and strength of the economy. Each local area will have its equivalent of a GDP, which is called a GVA, gross value added, and you get an idea through that as to how affluent that particular area is. So, for example, I'm based in Surrey. The GVA, the gross value add, is higher here than it is across the rest of the national equivalent GVAs. So that indicates that people who live and buy or rent in the Surrey area would tend to be more affluent. So prices are correspondingly that bit higher, both to buy and to rent. You also want to be checking out on the economic financial side the property returns and make sure that you can lend. If you are looking at buying abroad, which is an extreme version of distance investing, you can't always get mortgages in other countries. So, for example, in Poland, getting a mortgage on a property in Poland is much more difficult now because they look for Polish zloty income. So if your main source of income is sterling, it makes it a bit more difficult. And the property returns I've alluded to, if you're in an affluent area, you may well be getting, decent returns. You may well be getting, if you're in the southeast, decent capital growth. But if you're looking for, really strong yields, you will be looking to the Midlands and North more. So you have to make sure that you are investing in the right local economies to deliver returns that you are looking for. Political, the P is for political. The stability and openness. If we're talking about a different country, you want to, if you're looking for vanilla, stable buy-to-lets, you want to be investing in more stable political setups and stable economies, ones that are open to foreign investment. And that can also, that's also relevant to local authorities in the UK. You get a different flavour in some left-wing local authorities versus right-wing authorities. They're all things that ought to be taken into account. And the L is for legal, ownership and letting rules. So legal ownership is not the same in every country, and letting rules aren't the same either. So you ought to be checking out in the UK things like landlord licensing, Article 4 and selective licensing. Are they good or bad things for you and your strategy? The E is for environment and the landscape. Now, if you are looking, you've got a holiday let or serviced accommodation, if you're investing in an area of national beauty, an AONB, you are more likely to get higher rental incomes than if you're not in an area of national beauty. There are some certain quirks, that do help ensure you get a premium, a rental premium. And the final D of step-led is demographic. It's the population makeup. So if your chosen strategy is bungalow flips, then you're probably going to be more likely to be successful if you're in an area where there's an aging population, where there is a strong demand for single-story properties. So there we are, step-led. Not all of those different items on the checklist are going to be relevant to you, but it's a useful checklist and a start point to make sure that you haven't missed anything out, and as a sanity check for you to check before you invest. So how can you use due diligence to mitigate risk? Well, my top tip would be to start at the end and work backwards. It's a really good idea to have a number of exit strategies. We can't predict, if we're looking 6 months or 12 months out, what the market will look like. And if prices go up or lenders get more tight on the way that they value properties, it may well be that your property isn't valued at what you're expecting. And so you might well want a secondary exit so that you don't end up losing money, and maybe you can hold that property for a little bit longer, for another year or two, until the timing is right for you to exit in your chosen way. Contingency planning is incredibly important, looking at a range of scenarios, returns and timeframes, and in terms of contingency budget. Who knew 2.5 years ago that COVID would hit? And we've had all sorts of problems. So, with lockdown, builds being frozen in their tracks, things that are delayed for 6 months. We've now got the issue with budgets. A lot of raw materials have gone up, plaster, windows. So we're having to look at bigger contingency budgets, where 10% might have been fine as a contingency in the past. It may well need to be more like 20% in some instances. So making sure that you've got all of those contingencies built in will try and protect you against risk. Start early on. The more that you can do up front before you actually complete on the transaction, the better. And one example I give is on title checking. The example I gave early on is, surely a solicitor does that, you don't need to. Well, yes, they will. But it might help you, if you download from Land Registry a title deed and you can see who owns it. You can check that the vendor is who they say they are. You can check what the history of pricing is. That can help you with negotiation. You can even check out whether there are going to be any tricky covenants or title defects or easements, and all of that will help inform you. And you can prepare and put the right questions into your solicitor, making sure that they are asking all the right questions of the vendor as well. So it's just an interesting thing to do pretty early on. Now, balancing risk and reward is important. if you start small and make smaller mistakes, you can then learn and scale rather than going in feet first and spending and investing a lot of money, exposing yourself to a potential higher risk. And also, making sure that the risk and reward are commensurate. You don't get huge rewards without an element of risk. So sanity check the fact that the risk and reward does make sense. A technique that I learned from my management consultancy days, my business days before setting up Property Venture in my business, is don't rely 100% on others, and use this technique that I refer to as triangulation. What that means is, if you are investing at distance and a local agent says to you, oh yeah, if you buy that and refurbish it, you're bound to increase the value by 150k, and then that makes all your numbers work. That's quite an important fact or opinion. So rather than relying on one point of information, one source of information, it's a really good idea to check out one or two other sources so that you've got 3 points of information. Check out online, do your desk research, go to a different agent who may not have a vested interest in the property that you're looking at investing in. So make sure that you do not just rely on one source of information, particularly where that piece of information is crucial to the success or failure of your investment. In fact, there's a school of thought that if something is that important, you keep going with the sources 3, 4, 5, 6 until you come up with no new information. And it's at that point that you realise that that's probably quite a robust thing that you can rely on as much as anything. That might mean collecting 7 points of information, but that's really down to a judgment call from yourself. Don't get seduced by bank grade due diligence. That sounds sexy. Some of the crowdfunding platforms use it. But a bank is going to be carrying out different due diligence to that which you need to do to satisfy yourself. Plus, also, it's a bit more of a promotional marketing ploy. What, in fact, does bank grade due diligence look like? Might not be appropriate at all, but you can easily get seduced by some of these great phrases. And another way where we can fail or fluff up is when we get pressurized. When developers say, this development is 50% sold, hurry, otherwise, the rest can sell by the end of the week. It's when we're up against a time and a deadline, we can sometimes forget the basics and get ourselves into a tricky situation. So there's some thoughts on how you can use due diligence, this unsexy topic, to actually get your returns looking a lot more sexy and reducing risks. So very important things to consider. Just a case example of how I've helped an expat distance invest. This was during COVID, and this expat wasn't able to come over and view the properties. So what he was looking for was a low maintenance, decent yielding buy to let. He wanted minimum ongoing running costs. He wanted capital growth would be a bonus, but definitely was looking for professional tenants. And there was a deadline. This was the original SDLT holiday. So that was the brief. And what I did was shortlist a number of geographic options that were going to potentially deliver against his requirements, looking at the different characteristics of each of those areas. And a lot of the value that I can give for someone who's at a distance, not in this country or not in the area, is matching up the reality with the theory. We can all do a lot of desk research online using sources like, using the portals, using other data sets as well. But a lot of the numbers that we get online are quite often distorted, because a lot of the stats are based on asking prices rather than achieved actual prices. So there can be a 10% inflationary effect on the numbers that you're looking at. And there's also a time lag. So even if you're getting the most accurate information, which is land registry, which is 3 months old, if you're getting more up-to-date information, it tends to be less accurate because it's based on asking prices rather than the reality of the sold prices. And so I gave that perspective in terms of reality versus theory, and helped shortlisted a number of properties from which he could select. And as a result of the help and working very quickly, which was a very odd market, properties were being snapped up left, right and centre, but I managed to get him a 3-bed freehold house versus a leasehold flat, which is what he'd originally thought he could afford. So using someone like me has helped give him the assurance. He's not been able to come and see. I've been his eyes and ears, and I've been able to look at properties, do video viewings, but the practical side of the video viewings, the reality, not the glossy estate agents videos and walkthroughs, but how big is the storage space, what conditions the boiler in, so that he knew what kind of maintenance or refurb he would have to do before letting the property out. So getting things set up right at the outset, and I help with that. Not only on finding the property, getting and negotiating on the price, but also making sure that it's a tried and tested solicitor. I referred him to a solicitor that a number of expats have successfully used. And that helped him because he got let down by a solicitor on a previous transaction who hadn't pointed something out to him, and he'd had to pull out of that. So it resulted in an aborted transaction. He wasted money on it. So it was important to him to get things set up at the outset, and then making sure he was in the best possible financial position before he went in. And it meant that it put him in a strong negotiating position, and he got a discount off the market, plus also got it done in time so that he made the stamp duty tax savings as well. So the value of working alongside someone else who's keen on doing due diligence is making sure that not only is the property right, the people you're dealing with, plus also all the financials are there in the right place at the right time at the outset. So I mentioned I would summarize the differences between distance due diligence and standard due diligence. Well, your desk research is going to be the same, plus, you're going to be doing desk research on steroids. You're going to be using Google Maps and Google Earth that much more, because you're not necessarily going to be in the area to check things out. You can be relying on a third-party independent view. Now, whether that's someone who offers a full-blown buying agency service like me, or it might well be, a transactional service like Viewber, getting someone locally just to go and take some pictures and send them through with the right kind of angles and photos that you're looking for if you can't find them on the estate agent's website. And you're going to be doing much more rigorous and depth research. I suspect your investment criteria might be the same. You've already decided what your capital growth, what your budget is, what type of property you want. And it may well be that your exit strategy is pretty similar. But, some of the other due diligence is going to be more in depth. You might want to interview and check out agents, and that might well be on the telephone. The agents who you're going to be dealing with as an estate agent, but also letting agents. When you're investing at distance, you are going to be that much more reliant on people. And people was a key thrust of what I think is important to cover as part of your due diligence. And it's very easy to ask the questions about, what it is they do, their process, and the rest of it. But asking what if scenarios, like if this problem arose, if there was a leaky roof, if, a tenant locked themselves out, what would they do? It's much easier to get an idea of how good a letting agent is going to be, or managing agent is going to be, when you ask some tricky questions and see what their responses are. Problem solving is harder to do at distance, so you really do want to check that out. Not always possible, but if you can, potentially a telephone conversation with the vendor. Whilst inspection trips are advisable, if not, the next best thing are independent videos and images, or even if you're not employing a full-blown service like myself or a Viewber, even just someone who you know in the neighbourhood and trust their perspective, it's worth getting them to have a look. So having done all of this due diligence at distance on the people you're working with, the letting and managing agent, the property itself, the area, all of those kinds of things, you really want to make sure that you, at the last stretch of the journey, get the right tenants in. You don't want to fall down and cause yourself problems by relaxing your criteria for tenants. So you want to make sure that the tenant checking is really good, and that letting agent has properly vetted them, and that they fit your criteria and that you are comfortable with them. So let me just round off a little bit about how you can connect with me and if anybody wants to follow up. But please do put questions in the chat box. I can't see it, but once I finish this last slide, I will be able to see it. So I have a 30-minute virtual due diligence health check. I'll copy and paste that URL link into the chat box for anybody who wants to book that. And that can be about, you know, if you've been caught out with due diligence before in the past, someone's misled you, you've ended up in a tricky situation and you want to avoid that, this could be the session for you. Likewise, if you're not sure about due diligence and what you ought to do, and make sure you set it up right in the first place. Again, this is the kind of 30-minute you could be doing with to give you some ideas on what you can be doing to help yourself and de-risking your investment. I'm on all the normal social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I've got all of the normal regulatory memberships and approvals that you would expect. I do offer the investing service in the UK, member of the Property Redress Scheme, won an award. Plus also I can help if someone is looking to buy abroad. I am on the advisory board of the overseas industry body, the AIPP, which is the Association of International Property Professionals. So I have a very strong network and know the differences between buying and investing in the UK and abroad. So there's some interesting things there. So if anybody wants to, I'll put the link in the Q&A box there. So that's the end of the presentation. Let me just stop sharing so I can then, oh, there's lots of going on in the chat there. Let me just put my link in there. Rob, have you got any comments just while I'm doing that, and I can then have a look in the chat box?
Louise, it's amazing. It's something I mean, we look at due diligence, yes, but it goes much more into it, doesn't it? Your presentation goes much more into it than I've done. I've actually got one property that I've never been inside, but
that's not necessarily a bad thing if you've done your due diligence and everything there, Rob. Whereabouts is that one that you've never been in?
Near Burnley.
Okay, has it been?
It's rented out on. It's rented out on a contract to someone, and I've had it 5-6 years now, and it's been fine. But I've never actually been inside it, which to me is total stupidity. But I mean, other people make it work. I don't know. Maybe you know. I like to at least go and have a look.
Yes, if you can. But it's not. Yeah, if it's worked out for you, then that's great. So Yogesh is saying that he invests a lot remotely, which is great. Whereabouts have you? I don't know where you're based, Yogesh, and where therefore you invest. And you're saying, do you help remote investors but below market value property or high return on cash invested? Yeah, I have worked with remote and distance investors who have got a specific brief that they want to fulfill. So I work on a bespoke brief for those clients. I'm acting as a buyer's agent. They retain me, pay me a fee. So I'm acting on their behalf rather than an estate agent who's acting for a vendor. I also offer consultations for if someone wants to do it themselves, but they actually want to check things out and have a bit of input to that and sanity check what they're doing. Triangulation can take a lot of time. This is Yogesh. Take a lot of time. How do you balance the time it may take to get 7 sources versus getting the correct facts? Well, on that particular, usually triangulation, just 3 points of 3 points of information or sources of information works. But if it's something that's critically important and your profitability relies on uplift or the amount of value you're going to add to a property, you've got a lot resting on the end value. So on a key piece of information that can make or break your investment and make it a success or not, I would suggest that you would go to 7 sources. Doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time. I mean, it might well be 2 or 3 desk research sources, a couple of agents, someone who you know in your network. So it doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time to do that. But I wouldn't suggest that you do 7 sources of information on everything that you're checking out. It's about being pragmatic. Thanks, Rajesh, for the presentation. Dan, yes, I am on LinkedIn. Rajesh, I've put the links for LinkedIn there, both in terms of all my social media there, my email, and that link if anybody wanted to book a due diligence health check. How much percentage do you think, this is Deborah, how much percentage do you think you should put aside for a project? I'm not entirely sure what you mean there in terms of percentage of time or percentage of money. Doesn't necessarily take money, but it does take time and effort. If that's what you mean, Deborah, if you want to unmute yourself and let me know. I think you are unmuted. Do you want to let me know what you mean there in terms of how much percentage do you think you should put aside? Okay. Deborah's not coming in there. Oh, Croydon. Okay, so you're Croydon. And you invest all over Wigan, Chester, and all over London for Yogesh. Hardeep, thanks for the presentation. Can you advise on any tools or software to quickly carry out DD on individuals, businesses, or properties? Well, it's different. So in terms of properties, you know, you can use property data. There are a number of sources that, you know, amalgamate a lot of information in one place. So you can start with that. In terms of individuals and businesses, I think I gave some example of sources. You know, just check someone out, social media, businesses or developers, company's house. And again, that's triangulation. You know, you might want to check on social media as one point of contact or 2, company's house as another. So that, you know, there's a whole series of things that you can be doing on checking people out. So it's clickable. Was my link not clickable? That was clickable, wasn't it? The Outlook Office 365 bookings. New message. How much of my time? How much of my time? So when I'm investing, I spend a lot of time doing due diligence. In fact, I do a lot of mine up front. I really front weight things. Sorry, I just saw that one coming in, Paddy. Yes, I spend a lot of time checking everything out, you know, validating that I've got my resale values correct, checking out the professionals that I'm going to use, that they are expert in the areas that I'm going to be using them for, that if I've got an accountant, that they, you know, they've got the property experience, all of that kind of thing. So I do spend a lot of time doing it, and I spend a lot of time for clients. I don't know whether it's, you know, probably 50-50 or more, 60% due diligence before actually going out and doing the properties. So for example, for the expat client I mentioned, I spent at least 50% of the time doing desk research, checking things out, checking out estate agents, checking out properties, before I even got to doing viewings. And then I just organized my viewings particularly well, so that I packed things in a couple of days. So I organized my time around doing a lot of the due diligence up front and checking everything out. So yeah, I mean, that could be 50% of my time, 60%, Deborah, it depends on what the brief is, particularly if I've got to consider a number of different geographical areas. Due deal is quite, it can be expensive. I think that a lot of what you get on due deal, you can also get from Companies House for free. So it depends on what it is that you're looking for. But there are a number of different databases, you know, that you can pay for services, checking people out overseas. There's a number of different sources, but it all depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve and where best to spend your money. There's lots of free sources of information, but there are a few that you can use. So Michael, brilliant, Louise, thank you, Michael. What would you say is the number one thing that people miss when doing due diligence? I would say on the people side of things. There are so many people who get persuaded by great salespeople. They just drop their guard. You know, they think that someone's got a great reputation just because they've got a high profile, but don't actually check them out. And quite often there are some stories that get hidden. I've seen a number of people come a cropper, particularly when joint venturing, lending other people money, you know, private investments. So I would say not doing sufficient people due diligence is the one thing that people miss, or they don't necessarily think about doing it. Dr. Yogesh, what common sources do you find most helpful that are paid or free? Yeah, I've mentioned property data is really good. I use social media, I use all of the things that I've mentioned tonight. I use Companies House, but they also have different purposes for different things that I'm checking out. So there are, you know, property data, you can get a free 14-day trial. There are other sources out there as well that offer free trials. So yeah, it's horses for courses, but yeah, there are a whole host of free and paid for. I'm conscious it's just gone 9 o'clock there. Rob, one new message. Thanks for your approach, very sensible. There are too many sharks. There are a lot of sharks, and I'm part of a network actually called Property Sisters, and we regularly hear about people who are coming a cropper because they've trusted some guru or the next without actually properly checking out. There are also, you know, property tribes. There's all sorts of sources out there that you can go to, portals, and all the rest of it. So yeah.
Excuse me, Louise. Don't worry about time. That's okay.
Okay. Well, yeah. I will look to. All right. Great. Thanks, Rajesh. That's great. Anything else? Because that sort of wraps up the presentation. Thanks, Dan.
Are there any more questions, folks? Can't see any more. Thanks, Louise. A great talk from Dan.
Thank you.
And good old me as well, because I agree. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So totally different subject. Very interesting. And yeah, fantastic.
Great.
I'd like to get some feedback from people, if possible. You know, just generally how the meet's going. What do you think? You know, anything you'd like to see coming up? Anything we can arrange? That sort of thing. I think the two ladies have been fantastic speakers. Will is always good, but I believe he's shot off anyway. He did say he was going to go. So on that note, it's just gone 9 o'clock. It's about right. So it's about time to close down. So look forward to next month, which is, I think, I'm not sure what day it is. It's the first Wednesday of the month, first Wednesday of October. We do have one speaker booked in who's Colin Smith. He's a commercial planner, and we'll try and fix someone up to go along with him. In the meantime, once again, ladies, absolutely brilliant. Alice was great. Louise was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been great being here and listening to Alice as well. And Will's as well, and hearing all of your questions as well.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Pleased to be of service. Any questions, any feedback from anyone, always pleased to listen. And apart from that, I think we'll say good night. It's good night from me, and it's good night from Dan, good night from Louise, from Alice. And that'd be that, folks. And good evening to Pardeep, because I was going to say hello to him, but there you go. I didn't. But we know Pardeep, so that's all right. Okay, see you later, folks. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.